Whoa! Who's there? Miss, can you hear me?
Please. I walked all night. They took everything. My home, my kin.
Not everything. You're still here. You're home now.
The wind came down from the high ridges like a ghost that had lost its way. It moaned through the cottonwoods and swept across the open Wyoming plain, dragging dust, snow, and silence in its wake. The night had that brittle stillness that made a man feel small beneath the stars. Inside his cabin, Eli Mercer sat at the table, a half-empty cup of coffee cooling by his hand. The clock on the mantel ticked steady, a reminder that time still moved even when life had stopped meaning much. He hadn't spoken to another soul in nearly a week. The cattle didn't need words, and the sky never answered when he did speak. It had been that way since Ruth passed, 5 winters gone now. Death had taken her quiet, the same way it had taken his father, his mother, and the softness in his own voice. All that remained was work. Fence posts. Feed sacks. The rhythm of solitude. But that night, as the wind shifted, Eli heard something different. Not the cry of a coyote. Not the groan of the barn door. It was softer, broken, like someone calling from far off. He froze, listening. There it was again, faint, lost beneath the moan of the wind. A sound no wild thing could make. He grabbed his coat from the peg, pulled the collar high, and stepped outside. The cold bit instantly, sharp as a knife on skin. The yard stretched before him in shadows, the barn a black silhouette against the pale snowlight. He started toward it, boots crunching the frost. Halfway across the yard, he saw the shape, small, slumped, near the fence line. At first, he thought it might be a calf that had broken loose. But as he drew closer, the light from his lantern fell over it, and his heart kicked hard in his chest. It was a woman. She lay half buried in mud, one hand outstretched toward the barn, her dress torn and soaked, her face hidden beneath a tangle of dark hair. He dropped to his knees beside her. Her skin was ice cold, her breath shallow, ragged. "Ma'am," he said softly, his voice rough from disuse. "Can you hear me?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her hand twitched once, then went still. Eli hesitated only a heartbeat. He slid his arms beneath her and lifted her from the ground. She was lighter than he expected, bones and cold and silence. Her head rested against his chest as he carried her across the yard, the lantern swinging in his other hand. Inside the barn, he kicked the door shut behind him, shutting out the wind. The air smelled of hay and horses, warm from their breath. He laid her down on a blanket near the stove, struck a match, and lit the fire. The flame caught slow, then flared, throwing long orange light across the wooden walls. He worked quietly, methodically, fetching water from the trough, warming it over the fire, washing the mud from her face. Beneath the dirt, she was young, no more than 25, with fine features and skin pale from cold. A bruise darkened her temple. Another ran along her collarbone. Someone had hurt her, and not long ago. Eli's jaw tightened. He'd seen violence before, on men, on animals, but it hit different when it touched someone helpless. He found an old quilt, wrapped her in it, and sat close enough to feel the faint warmth of her breath. Her eyelids fluttered once, and she murmured something, one word too soft to catch. Then she slipped back into stillness. Outside, the storm deepened. The wind rattled the shutters, the roof groaned, and the snow began to fall thick and heavy. Eli poured coffee into a tin cup, but his hands shook too much to drink it. He couldn't stop staring at her. There was something about her face, the curve of her brow, that pulled him back through time, to Ruth, to every night he'd prayed for a reason to keep living and never got one. He forced himself to move. He stoked the fire, checked the horses, then returned to the woman. Her breathing had steadied some. He laid a hand against her cheek, cool still, but no longer lifeless. "You're safe," he whispered, though the words felt strange on his tongue. The night dragged slow. He stayed awake, listening to the rhythm of the fire and her shallow breaths. Outside, wolves howled from the distant ridge, their cries carried thin by the wind. He sat with his rifle across his knees, the old habit of vigilance returning without thought. But no sound could pull him from her side. When dawn finally broke, It came soft and blew through the cracks in the boards. The storm had passed. The world outside was white and still, every fence post crowned in snow. Eli's eyes burned from sleeplessness, but he didn't feel tired. The woman stirred beneath the quilt, her lips moving faintly. He leaned closer. Easy now. Her eyes opened. They were green, the kind of green that caught the light like glass. Confusion swam there first, then fear. She struggled to rise, gasping, her gaze darting around the barn. Where am I? Mercer Ranch, he said quietly. Found you outside last night. She pressed a hand to her throat, eyes wide. I need to go. You ain't going anywhere till you can stand, he said, firm but gentle. You were half dead when I found you. She looked at him, breath shaking, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. Finally, she nodded faintly and sank back into the blanket. Her lips trembled. Thank you. Eli nodded once. You remember your name? A pause. Then a whisper. Clara. He repeated it under his breath, as if testing the weight of it. Clara. The name felt right somehow. It settled in the air between them like a fragile truce. He made her broth, and she drank slowly, her hands trembling. When she asked how long she'd been there, he told her one night. When she asked if anyone had come looking, he said no, and didn't add that he hoped none would. By afternoon, the sun melted the top layer of snow, filling the yard with the sound of dripping water. Eli moved through his chores, but his mind stayed with her. He couldn't explain it. Maybe it was the way her voice shook when she said her name, or how her eyes seemed older than her face. Maybe it was that he'd forgotten how it felt to care whether someone lived or died. That night, as he added wood to the fire, she watched him. Her voice was soft. Why did you help me? He paused, the question settling deep. Seemed the right thing to do. Most men wouldn't stop, she said. Not out here. He looked at her, the flicker of flame catching the lines on his face. Most men forget they were made for more than leaving others to the wolves. She smiled faintly, but it didn't last. Her gaze dropped to the floor. I don't remember everything, she murmured. Just running. The sound of horses behind me. Then nothing. Eli's hands stilled. Horses. She nodded. 4, maybe 5. They were close. I thought, she swallowed hard. I thought I was going to die. The mornings came quiet after the storm, the world wrapped in white silence. Frost glazed the fence rails, and the creek behind the barn moved slow under a film of ice. Inside, the fire burned low, casting a soft orange glow that reached no farther than the cot where the woman lay. Eli sat nearby, his back to the wall, sharpening his knife more out of habit than need. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted to her face, half hidden by the quilt, pale and still but alive. When she stirred, it was faint, a breath catching in her throat. Her fingers twitched beneath the blanket. He leaned forward, voice low and even. You're safe. Just rest. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, green like moss after rain. For a heartbeat she looked straight through him, lost somewhere far away. Then fear set in. She tried to sit up, gasping, clutching at the quilt. Easy now, he said, raising a hand. You're hurt, and it's cold as death outside. You move too quick, you'll faint again. She stared, eyes wide, chest heaving. Where am I? Wyoming Territory, he said. Half a day west of Pine Hollow. My place. Her lips trembled. Who are you? Eli Mercer. She blinked, her breathing slowing. I don't remember. That's all right, he said gently. Reckon memory can wait till you've got strength enough to stand on it. She pressed a hand to her temple, wincing. It's all fog. He rose, poured warm water from the kettle, and handed her a cup. Drink. You've been out near 2 days. Storm near took you. She hesitated before taking it, her hands trembling so badly he steadied the cup for her. She drank, slow and cautious, then glanced toward the window where daylight cut through the frost. You found me. He nodded once. Outside the barn. Face down in the mud. Figured God didn't bring you that far just to leave you. Something flickered in her eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or sorrow. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't answer, just nodded and turned back to the stove. The hours drifted like slow water. She slept often, waking to find him tending the fire or sitting on the porch with his rifle balanced across his knees. When she asked why he stayed close, he only said, "Wolves v been bold this winter." But wolves weren't what worried him. He'd found new tracks near the ridge that morning. Horses, 5 or 6, heading south. They'd passed within a mile of the ranch. Whoever they were moving slow, like men searching. By evening, she managed to sit up. The color had come back to her cheeks, though faint. He brought her soup, thin but hot, and set it by her bed. She smiled weakly. "You take care of everyone like this, Mr. Mercer?" He shook his head. "Ain't had much reason to." Her smile faded, replaced by a soft curiosity. "You live alone?" "Been that way some years now." "Your wife?" "Buried out by the cottonwood," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the fire. "She was a kind woman. World's been colder since she left." The silence that followed wasn't heavy, just human. She sipped her soup, and he listened to the wind scraping against the window panes. The next day, he helped her to her feet. She leaned on his arm, unsteady but determined. The air smelled of pine smoke and thawing snow. He led her to the doorway, where the morning sun spread gold across the land. "It's beautiful," she said softly. He looked out with her. "Some days it is. Others, it's just empty." She turned toward him. "I don't remember my name," she said after a while. "Everything before you found me feels like a dream I can't wake from." He studied her for a moment, then said, "Till you do, how about Grace?" She frowned slightly. "Grace seemed fittin'," he said. "You're still here when most wouldn't be." She smiled, faint but real. "Grace, then." From that morning on, he called her by it. And with each passing day, she began to fit into the quiet of the place like she'd always belonged. She fed the chickens when she could stand, brushed down the horses with careful hands, and learned to cook in his small kitchen, though she laughed once and said she'd forgotten how to even hold a spoon. The laughter startled him, the sound of it. He hadn't heard laughter inside those walls in 5 long years. It made something ache deep in his chest, something half alive and half afraid to be. One evening, as he carried in a pail of water, she was humming by the window. The sound stopped him cold. She looked up, embarrassed. "Sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to." "Don't stop," he said, setting the pail down. "Ain't often the house sounds human." That made her smile. She turned back to the window, humming again, soft and sweet. He stood there longer than he meant to, watching the sunlight catch her hair. Later, when she asked about the scars on his hands, he told her about the winter of '81, when a blizzard took half his herd and near took him too. He spoke of Ruth only once, how she'd fallen sick with fever while he was out breaking a new mare. By the time he returned, she was gone. Grace listened in silence, her eyes shining in the firelight. "That kind of loss," she whispered, "it doesn't leave, does it?" He shook his head. "No. You just learn to carry it quieter." Outside, coyotes called to one another across the plains. She shivered and drew closer to the fire. "The sound gives me chills." "Means they're huntin'," he said. "They only sing when they're closing in." Her gaze drifted toward the dark window. "Do you think something's out there?" "Always is," he said. "Question is what kind." That night, when he checked the lanterns, he saw it again, boot prints near the fence, leading toward the road. They were fresher this time. He studied them in the lamplight, jaw tightening. Whoever had passed was watching. In the morning, he found Grace outside, gathering snowmelt in a tin basin. Her hair was tied back, her cheeks flushed pink from the cold. She looked more alive than the day he found her, but the faint bruise at her throat hadn't faded. He wondered what hands had left it there. "Storm comin' again," he said. She straightened, glancing at the sky. "You can tell already?" He nodded toward the horizon where the clouds had thickened, dark as ink. "Smell of iron in the air. Never lies." She smiled. "You read the sky like a book." He almost smiled back. Out here, sky's the only thing that answers when you talk to it. By afternoon, the wind had turned mean. He boarded the shutters and brought in more wood. Grace stayed by the fire, mending an old shirt of his she'd found in a trunk. When he passed, she said without looking up, "You keep your things neat. Like a man waitin' for company that never comes." He paused, surprised by the truth in it. Maybe I was.